Hey there. First off, I can't thank you enough for being here and watching this. And if you hit that subscribe button, that'd mean the world to me. Anyway, let's get into it. 1 second, I was sitting beneath those cheap backyard string lights, half tuned to the murmur of conversations, sipping on bargain bin white wine. The next, Candace was gliding between circles of people, commanding attention like the night was hers alone, radiant, effortless, magnetic. Then her voice cut through everything, louder than anyone else's, laced with that teasing cruelty she called humor. She lifted her glass and laughed. Come on, everyone knows nothing's happening in our bedroom. Ryan's practically living like a monk. The reaction was immediate. Shocked chuckles, confused smirks, the kind of half-laughter people use to pretend they're not uncomfortable. It hit me like a slap I never saw coming. My ears rang. The chatter faded. I stared at her, but she wouldn't meet my eyes. She was already pouring herself another drink, basking in her own joke. That smug glow, not shame, was what gutted me. I forced my face into something that might pass for a smile, jaw clenched so tight it felt like my teeth would crack. Funny, I said, voice hollow. Didn't realize your sense of humor had gotten this dark. She spun toward me, wide-eyed with fake innocence. Oh, relax, it's just a joke. But I couldn't. My fingers dug into the arms of the chair until the cheap plastic groaned. You made me into a punchline, I murmured, low but sharp enough to slice through the air. Someone coughed. A chair scraped. One of our friends slipped away toward the drinks table, desperate to escape the weight hanging over the yard. You're overreacting, she said, rolling her eyes. This is why no one can joke around you. No, I said, standing, slow, controlled, like the calm before a storm. Say whatever you want, just don't act surprised when it lands. She scoffed, lips curling into a smirk. It's not like I lied. That one? That one burned deeper than the rest. The kind of truth that feels like barbed wire. The backyard went dead quiet. Silence so heavy it felt loud. I could sense every stare, even without meeting a single eye. I work 60 hours a week, I said. I cook, I clean, I carry more than you'll ever admit. And somehow, I'm the one you turn into the villain. That's not what I said. Her voice cracked. For the first time that night, her confident mask slipped. You didn't need to, I replied. You already got your laugh. I stepped back, grabbed my jacket, and walked toward the gate. No yelling, no slammed doors, just leaving. Because in that moment, silence was the only dignity I had left. Picture this. Being humiliated. Not by some random stranger at a bar, but by your wife. In your own backyard. In front of the very people you considered friends. I'm Ryan, 37. Software consultant out of Denver. I was raised believing that if you stayed loyal, worked hard, and did the right thing, life would eventually repay you. Turns out, sometimes life doesn't care. Sometimes it drifts into apathy, and then without warning, it turns cruel. For years, I was on autopilot. Wake up, work, repeat. Same routines, same tired patterns, same woman I thought I knew better than anyone. I kept telling myself the cracks in our marriage were fixable. But that night, that wasn't a crack. That was the whole ground collapsing beneath me. And I hadn't even seen the worst part yet. So tell me, what would you do if the person you loved turned your pain into party entertainment? Leave your thoughts below, because this story, it's just getting started. 2 days later, I walked through the door carrying tulips, her favorite, and a bottle of red wine I'd driven across town to find. Candace always said effort mattered more than cost. Lately, I wasn't sure she still believed that. Hey, I called softly as I set the wine on the counter. Thought maybe we could do something tonight, just the two of us. She was curled on the couch, phone in hand, legs tucked underneath her. Didn't even look up. I placed the flowers on the coffee table and sat beside her. Dinner? That Greek place you love? She sighed. Not annoyed exactly, just exhausted. Ryan, why are you acting like this? It's weird. Acting like what? I asked. Like you're chasing me, she muttered, still scrolling. The word stunned me. Chasing her. My eyes flicked to the tulips, bright, hopeful, and suddenly they felt ridiculous. I'm not chasing, I said quietly. I'm trying. Finally, she looked at me, sharp, cold, like a stranger wearing her face. You're being needy. Needy. The word landed like a slap. All I wanted was one evening together, one night where I wasn't invisible or the butt of her jokes. She stood heading toward the bedroom. I've got plans. Lindsay's doing a girls' night. You didn't mention that. Well, I'm mentioning it now. I watched her grab her purse, smooth her dress, apply lipstick, bold, striking, not for me. You look nice, I whispered. She paused at the door, something flickering across her face. Guilt, maybe. Then gone. Don't wait up. The door closed with a soft click that felt louder than any slam. I sat in the silence, tulips wilting by the minute, wine unopened. Ever feel your own home turn against you? We built that apartment together, picked every mug, every throw pillow, even argued about which wall art we hated least. Now? I couldn't remember the last time she laughed at anything I said. The quiet after she left wasn't peaceful. It was suffocating, a weight pressing against my ribs until I could barely breathe. I reheated leftover pasta, sat in front of the TV, didn't even hit play, just stared, thoughts looping in circles. Was I really this easy to walk away from? This forgettable? Candace had changed. I wasn't blind, but I didn't realize how far gone we were until that night. I wasn't part of her world anymore. I was furniture, background noise. I used to believe loyalty and hard work were enough, that if you stayed true, people would see your worth and stay. But I was learning. Some people stay only long enough to drain you dry. The next morning I tossed the half-empty wine, threw out the flowers. Their petals had curled inward, collapsing like they already knew what I hadn't admitted yet. By afternoon, I packed a bag and drove west toward the foothills. I needed air, space, proof that I still existed. Because when the person you love starts treating you like a ghost, you start wondering if you were ever real to them at all. The trail wound through gold-lit pines, dirt crumbling beneath every step. My brother Jeff walked ahead, steady and unshaken, as if the earth itself wouldn't dare betray him. I followed, lungs burning, and welcomed the ache. It was better than the numbness I'd left behind. Jeff was the one who suggested the hike. No tension, just the open sky and a horizon that struck harder than language could ever capture, at least the way Jeff always put it. I hadn't given him the full story about Candace, just fragments. But brothers don't need full stories. They hear it in the pauses, the drag in your breath, the weight in what you don't say. Midway up the ridge, he slowed, glanced back over his shoulder. You're quiet. I shrugged. Not much to say without sounding pathetic. We reached a clearing where the trail widened, and Jeff motioned toward the valley with a sweep of his arm. Sunlight skimmed across the reservoir below, the water shining like poured mercury, distant and untouchable, like Denver's chaos couldn't reach us here. 5 minutes, he said. Spill it all. After that, I'm switching to tough love. A dry laugh escaped me, hollow in my chest. She humiliated me. At a party, made a crack about us not having sex, loud enough for the whole room to hear. Jeff winced. Damn, that's rough. Yeah. And 2 days later, I show up with flowers, try to set up a date. She calls me needy, then goes out with her friends. He dropped onto a sun-warmed boulder and leveled his gaze at me. And you stayed. I hesitated. It's complicated. Is it? He pressed. She embarrasses you in public, dismisses you in private, and treats you like a burden. And your fix for that is to plan another date? I sank onto the rock beside him, legs heavy as stone. I keep thinking it's just a phase, that if I wait it out, she'll suddenly remember you matter. Jeff finished for me. That's not love, Ree. That's waiting for someone to miss you after you disappear. Wind cut through the silence. He handed me his water bottle. No lecture in his expression, just quiet truth. Listen, he said. I'm not sentimental. But you're my brother. I've watched you pour everything into her, and you're still waiting for her to choose you. So tell me straight, when's the last time she did?" The question landed like a blow to the ribs. I searched for an answer I didn't have. Not recently. Maybe not in years. "I don't know," I admitted. Jeff nodded, like he already knew. "Then it's time." My throat tightened. "It's not that easy." "No," he said softly. "But neither is bleeding every day and pretending you're fine." We sat there in sunlight and quiet wind, mountains towering in indifferent stillness. I envied them, their permanence, their peace. "End it," Jeff said again, voice lower now. "You deserve better than being someone's afterthought." I looked down at the valley, the threads of highway, birds tracing wide arcs across the open sky, and for the first time, the thought settled fully. Maybe staying wasn't loyalty. Maybe it was just holding on to the ghost of who Candace used to be. Maybe it was time to choose myself. The lounge tried too hard to impress. Neon slogans blared good vibes only. Drinks came with names like Meltdown Mojito and Whiskey Kisses. Kevin from accounting was turning 30, so the entire office showed up. Half out of obligation, half chasing free alcohol. I hadn't planned on staying long. I barely got my coat off before I saw her. Candace. She stood at the far end of the bar, polished to perfection. Hair sleek, makeup precise, a performance in heels. She didn't notice me at first, but someone else did. Sierra. Candace's best friend since college, the one who used to tease me for being too serious but never missed a birthday text. Perched on a bar stool like she owned the place, sipping something neon and dangerous, she spotted me instantly. Before I could manage a polite nod, she slid off her stool and crossed the room, hips swaying with practiced ease. "Ryan," she said, voice honey warm, "didn't think I'd see you here." I managed a guarded smile. "Coworker's birthday." She leaned in, perfume soft but familiar. "I'm glad you came." We hadn't been alone in years, not since that double date at a Rockies game where she and Candace spent more time Instagramming nachos than watching baseball. But tonight Sierra was focused, intent. She brushed an invisible fleck from my sleeve. "You look good," she murmured. I raised a brow. "You always this complimentary?" Her grin tilted sly. "Only when it's overdue." It took me a second to catch on. This wasn't friendliness. It was deliberate, flirting, bold, effortless. Her laugh came too easily. Her hand lingered on my arm. People noticed. Especially Candace. From across the bar, I caught her watching, lips tight, expression unreadable but tense. I didn't smirk, didn't gloat, but I didn't look away either. "Is this weird?" I asked Sierra, nodding slightly toward Candace. "Only if you let it be," she said, smirk curling. Her fingers brushed my wrist again, casual but not accidental. And for the first time in months, I felt it. Being seen, wanted. Not because of what I endured, not because I fixed things, but simply for existing. The strangest part? I didn't feel guilty. This wasn't revenge. It wasn't calculation. It was gravity. Candace turned away, but the air in the room had shifted. People weren't looking at me with pity anymore. They were curious. The man she humiliated was now the one laughing with her best friend. Maybe that was petty, or maybe it was overdue. Sierra leaned close as the bartender slid her another drink. "You okay?" she asked, softer now. I hesitated, then surprised myself. I think I'm finally starting to be. And for once it was true. The next morning I woke before sunrise, not because I planned to, but because something inside me had shifted. Quiet. Final. Candace wasn't home when I got back from the bar. I didn't wait up, didn't text. The silence between us no longer ached. It had settled into something calmer. And somehow, that scared me more. I brewed coffee and stared out the window while the city stirred under a pale gray dawn. Somewhere between my first and second cup, I knew what had to happen. No suitcase, no dramatic scene, just the state website, a handful of forms, and a steady drive to the courthouse. Filing for divorce wasn't an explosion. It was an exhale, a release after months of holding my breath. I left the papers on the counter. When Candace finally walked in that afternoon, sunglasses, yoga mat, that too bright laugh she always carried after late nights, she spotted the documents before she spotted me. Her hand froze mid-motion, iced coffee halfway to the table. "What is this?" she demanded sharp. I looked up from the chair. "Exactly what it looks like." She flipped through the pages, stunned silent. "You've got to be joking." Her voice rose, edged with disbelief that was already souring into fury. "You're actually going to do this?" I stood unhurried and steady. "Because I made one joke at a party?" "No." My tone stayed flat, deliberate. "Because somewhere along the way you stopped seeing me as a person." Her eyes widened like I'd just said something impossible. "Are you hearing yourself? This is insane, Ryan. Completely over the top." I didn't react. "Not much different from your Instagram captions," I said. That struck something. I saw it flicker in the tightening of her jaw. "So you've been creeping on my stories now?" A faint smile tugged at my mouth. Not wide enough to comfort, just enough to unsettle. Hard to avoid. It's all late-night selfies and single and thriving posts at 2 a.m. She stepped in closer, clutching the papers in her hand like they were the only thing keeping her grounded. "You think walking away makes you the bigger person?" "I'm not running," I said quietly. "I'm leaving something that left me a long time ago." She searched my face, as though she might find some trace of the man she used to know, but that version of me was gone. "You're going to regret this," she spat. "Maybe," I said with a shrug, "but not as much as I regret keeping quiet for this long." She slammed the papers down on the counter, the crack of it echoing like a gavel. "Coward," she muttered, storming toward the hallway. I didn't answer. Cowards run. I'd been stuck in place for years. Moving forward felt like the bravest thing I'd done. The door slammed, rattling the frames on the wall. Then silence. Strangely soft, almost gentle. No cheering, no relief. Just a strange lightness in my chest. It was an ending, yes, but also the quiet hum of something new beginning. 3 weeks later, I was standing in the Clark Manning Gallery on Colfax, staring blankly at abstract art I couldn't make sense of, when I heard a laugh I recognized before I even saw her. Sierra. She walked in wearing a black backless dress, not suggesting attention but demanding it. Without hesitation, she slipped her arm through mine like we'd been arriving together for years, like she already belonged there. "Smile," she whispered, lips near my ear. "She's watching." I didn't need to ask who. I already knew. Across the room, Candace stood stiff in white trousers and a silk blouse, wine glass dangling loosely from one hand, composure hanging by a thread in the other. The moment her eyes found us, I saw it, the flash of shock sparking instantly into heat. Her jaw tightened, lips pressed thin. She turned to murmur something to the woman beside her, but she never stopped staring. "That's a solid 10 on the meltdown scale," Sierra murmured, smile never slipping as she leaned in just enough to make it look natural. "You're enjoying this?" I said, a smirk tugging despite myself. "I'm enjoying seeing you being seen," she answered. The words hit harder than she knew. I couldn't remember the last time I'd felt truly seen, not since before the cracks started forming in my marriage. We drifted through the gallery, half looking at art, half ignoring the whispers trailing behind us. The tension wasn't in what we did, but in what everyone assumed we might. Eventually, I stepped out onto the patio to breathe. The night was sharp and cool, streets below slick with rain, headlights smeared across wet asphalt like careless brushstrokes. For a moment, the quiet was almost enough, until the sound of heels clicked behind me. "You are unbelievable," Candace's voice sliced through the air, brittle and cold. I didn't turn at first. I'd learned how much weight silence could carry. Finally, I faced her, calm. "Sierra? Really?" she snapped. "You told me to move on," I said evenly. Her laugh was sharp, bitter. "Move on? This question mark? This is performance art. Kinda like your Instagram captions?" Her glare hardened. "She's using you. And you didn't?" My voice stayed level. "You humiliated me, ignored me. made me feel invisible in my own marriage. And now that someone else actually sees me, suddenly you care? This isn't you, she hissed. No, I said, stepping closer. This is who I became because of who you were. That one landed. She faltered. No apology, no explanation, just venom. You think she's better than me? Candace's voice cracked sharp. She flirts with anyone who breathes. I gave her a small, sad smile. Maybe, but tonight she's shown me more kindness than you have in the last year. Her face twisted, like she wanted to throw another blow, but I didn't let her. This is your reflection, Candace, I said quietly as I walked past. Look long enough and you'll see exactly what you lost. I didn't look back. For the first time, I didn't care if she followed. Sierra showed up the next Thursday, Thai takeout in one hand and a bottle of wine in the other, cardigan slipping casually off her shoulder like something out of a lifestyle spread. Thought we could use a night that doesn't involve thinking or cooking, she said, slipping inside like she already knew her way around. Maybe, in some way I couldn't explain, she did. We ate on the floor, cartons scattered between us. She sat cross-legged, stealing my spring rolls without asking. I reached for the coffee table, laughing like teenagers raiding a fridge past midnight. Later, she started a playlist, soft acoustic songs I'd heard 1,000 times but never really listened to. She poured wine, handed me a glass, and leaned against the couch beside me. Our knees touched, natural, easy. I like it here, she murmured. I glanced at her. The apartment? No, her eyes found mine. This version of you. Her tone carried something quieter than flirting, something intentional. Her fingers traced the rim of her glass as she went on. You've always had this calm about you. Even when Candace was unraveling, you stayed steady. I used to think, you deserve someone who looks at you and doesn't want to change a thing. The words were too sharp to be casual. You rehearse that? I asked, trying to sound playful. Something in my voice made her pause. Maybe, she admitted with a faint smile. I've wanted to say it for a while. I nodded, not sure what to do with the weight of it. Looked down at my glass. That's complicated. Only if you make it complicated, she said, resting her head lightly against my shoulder. We sat in quiet, the hum of the city filtering through the cracked window, night air curling around us. Later, she helped me rinse glasses at the sink, barefoot, sleeves rolled up. We joked about the weak water pressure like we'd been doing this forever. In a way I couldn't quite name. It almost felt soothing, familiar even. Yet when she pulled away, I lingered in the doorway longer than reason allowed, watching the soft red glow of her tail lights fade into the night. Only after they disappeared did I step back inside. The apartment felt quieter than it ever had before. Not empty, more like paused, mid-breath. I washed the same dishes twice, my hands moving without thinking, then drifted to sit at the edge of the bed. The scent of her perfume still hung there, delicate, floral, intentional. That's when it hit me. The way she'd spoken earlier, the phrasing so precise, every line falling exactly where it needed to. Not casual, prepared, like words rehearsed and waiting for their cue. Had she really been seeing me all this time, or just studying me? There's a gulf between being known and being examined, and suddenly I wasn't sure which side I'd been standing on. I told myself I was overthinking, that old wounds make you suspicious, make you jump at shadows. But under that excuse, a question was growing, heavy and insistent, like a bruise under the ribs. Had I just stumbled out of one performance and into another? Sometime after midnight, my phone buzzed against the nightstand. The apartment was silent. No background music, no half-finished glasses of wine. Just me, an abandoned paperback, and the hollow kind of quiet that only arrives when the noise is gone. I almost ignored the alert until I saw the name. Andrew S. Andrew, a co-worker. Not someone I'd ever called a friend. We'd worked together once, years ago. Polite, distant. No contact since. His message was short. Hey, this is random, but you should probably know what Candace used to say back then. Ever think Sierra had something to do with how she treated you? I read it once, then again, slower. My chest tightened as I typed back, "What do you mean?" The three dots pulsed. Then, Candace bragged that Sierra told her to mess with you, like, cut you off emotionally, see how far you'd go. Some twisted game. I thought she was joking, but now, I'm not so sure. Figured you should know. The words hit like a physical blow. I stared at the screen, torn between hurling the phone across the room or letting it slip from my hand. My pulse roared in my ears. It had to be a mistake. A warped story passed around, misunderstood over time, maybe dulled by alcohol. But it didn't feel like a mistake. It felt like the missing piece snapping perfectly into place. Every strange remark, every carefully timed compliment, every studied look Sierra gave me. Precise, deliberate, not just recently, even back when Candace and I were still married. She'd been watching, maybe pulling strings, emotionally starve him, see what he does. The phrase looped in my head, slow and relentless, like dripping water. I didn't sleep that night. I just sat there in the dark, the lights off, replaying every quiet stare Sierra had ever given me. Was it love? Or observation? Who hides cruelty behind devotion's mask? How long had I been an experiment in someone else's test? By morning, the apartment felt heavier, almost complicit, as if it had been keeping its own secrets all along. I didn't call Sierra. I didn't reach out to Candace. I didn't shout. I just sat at the kitchen table, blinds half open, fingers clenched around a mug of coffee I couldn't remember making, rewinding years I thought I understood. Here's what no one warns you about betrayal. It doesn't always explode like thunder. Sometimes it seeps in, quiet, poisonous, until one day you realize it's been flowing through you for years, rewriting the past. People say the truth is power. That morning it felt like loss. There's a particular kind of self-destruction in searching for answers. You never dig unless some part of you already suspects what's buried. By Sunday, I found myself pulling out the old laptop from the first year of our marriage. It had been shoved into a closet drawer, buried beneath expired warranties and tangled chargers. I told myself I was just cleaning, but I knew the truth. I was looking for something I didn't want to find. The screen flickered awake with a sluggish hum, keys worn smooth by memory. Instinct carried me to an old backup email. The account we once used for utility bills, apartment leases, plans for a future we thought we'd share. My fingers remembered their way. Minutes later, there it was, a folder labeled Shared Candace. I opened it. Thread after thread scrolled by. Mostly ordinary things, grocery lists, trip confirmations, memes sent at midnight. But halfway down, one subject line caught my eye. Re-strategy talk. The first message dated back 5 years. 5. I clicked it open. Candace to Sierra. He falls apart when I pull back emotionally. It's instant, like flipping a switch. Sierra's reply, of course he does. He's wired to overcare. Use that. Go quiet. Watch him crawl back. Skip goodnight kisses. See if he notices. He'll fight harder if you ration affection. I kept reading, stomach tightening with every scroll. Message after message, meticulous and cruel. This wasn't clumsy advice from a toxic friend. This was coordinated, methodical. Sierra teaching Candace how to dismantle me piece by piece. And Candace, the woman I once made soup for when she was sick, stayed up proofreading her grad school essays, defended at family dinners when everyone else rolled their eyes. She didn't hesitate. She followed the plan, skipped date nights, reported back. He brought me flowers today. Guess it's working. I closed the laptop, but silence didn't soften the storm in my head. I stood there, hands braced on the desk, lungs tight, walls closing in. It hadn't just been Candace. It was a joint effort. Candace was the executioner. Sierra wrote the script. And now Sierra was here, on my couch, kissing me with the same mouth that once coached my wife to starve me of love. I didn't cry. I didn't smash the screen. I closed it carefully, like I was diffusing something volatile, because it was volatile. Not just the betrayal, I'd survived betrayal before. The real danger was this. I no longer knew who I could trust, not even the ones who loved me most convincingly. The conference room smelled faintly of stale coffee and toner. Two clerks sat at the far end, shuffling papers, earbuds in. No raised voices, no theatrics. Just quiet signatures, quiet contracts. The silent, bureaucratic dismantling of a life. Candace sat across from me, her posture immaculate in a charcoal blazer, lipstick a touch too daring for the gravity of what hung between us. The faint, repetitive tap of her pen on the tabletop betrayed a nervous tick, one she used to criticize in others. I watched her in silence, letting the quiet settle heavy around us before I finally broke it. "I know," I said. Her tapping stopped mid-motion. "No, what?" I leaned in, lowering my voice to something she couldn't mistake for anything but truth. All of it. The emails, the manipulation. Sierra's hand in this. How you let yourself be turned into her pawn. Her expression shifted. Not denial, not outrage, just weary acceptance. She didn't argue, didn't defend herself, just breathed out, slow and deliberate. "You went through my accounts," she murmured. I shook my head. I went through mine. You left the proof sitting there like you never imagined I'd care enough to look." Her eyes brimmed, though pride kept the tears clinging where they were. "I was lonely," she whispered, almost to herself. "You were always busy, fixing everything except me." "Sierra didn't fix you either," I said, cutting clean through her confession. "She just showed you how to wound me for loving you the way I did." Candace opened her mouth, but I didn't let her speak. "You turned us into an experiment," I continued. "Every gesture, every compromise, I gave freely, and you twisted them into leverage. When I finally cracked and stopped trying, you acted surprised, like you didn't see it coming." A single tear broke loose, carving a black streak through her mascara. "I'm sorry," she breathed. "I believe you," I replied quietly. "But believing doesn't change what's been done." She lifted her gaze, truly meeting mine for the first time, as if only now comprehending the enormity of what she'd lost. Her voice trembled. "I miss what we were." I studied her for a long moment. "You lost me chasing the approval of someone who never cared about either of us," I said. "And the worst part? I think you knew that, and let her pull the strings anyway." Candace exhaled, uneven, fractured. "If I could take it back—" "But you can't," I interrupted softly. "And that's the part that cuts the deepest, isn't it?" The paralegal reappeared then, sliding a neat stack of documents across the table. Neither of us spoke as we signed, ink scratching through the last remnants of what we'd been. When it was done, I stood to leave. Candace's hand twitched toward me. "Ryan, wait!" I paused, hand braced on the back of my chair. "You really feel nothing?" I turned toward her, not cruel, not angry, just finished. "No," I said, "I feel peace." And then I walked away. No slammed doors, no raised voices, only the muted rhythm of my shoes against polished floors, followed by the quiet, final click of the door closing behind me. A year later, I found myself in the gymnasium at Willow Creek Elementary, surrounded by paper collages, half-drained juice boxes, and PTA sign-up sheets I barely understood. This wasn't my world, not really, but life has a way of softening sharp edges when you least expect it. Claire stood beside me, solid, steady, a pediatric nurse whose laughter was effortless and whose words carried quiet intention. We'd met at Jeff's barbecue, ordinary, almost forgettable, yet somehow it became the moment everything good began. Her hand rested lightly on my arm as we watched her son, Logan, weaving between tables with a juice pouch in one hand and a paper airplane in the other. "You okay?" she asked softly. I nodded. "Yeah, feels right here." She smiled. Not the polite kind, but the unguarded kind. The kind that feels like the first lungful of clean air after months underground. Across the gym I saw her, Candace. She stood near the mural wall, a crumpled volunteer sticker clinging to her sweater. Hair pulled back simply, makeup muted, posture unpolished. No performance, just existence. Her eyes met mine briefly, flicked toward Claire, then back. She smiled, a small, wistful curve. Honest. I didn't smile back, not out of malice. There was simply nothing left to give. I turned to Claire, guiding her toward the snack table where Logan waved us over, grinning wide. And that was it. No confrontations, no lingering glances, just a quiet acknowledgement, a faint echo from a life I no longer lived. Here's what I've learned. Healing doesn't arrive with fireworks. It doesn't shout or announce itself. It seeps in through ordinary days, the steady presence of someone kind, the laughter at dinner, the stillness of sleeping without rehearsing old wounds. For so long, I believed closure required answers, apologies, reckoning. But closure came when I chose to let go. When I chose a life and a love that didn't demand my breaking to prove my worth. So if you're still clutching something that's already released you, take this as your sign. Sometimes, the quietest form of revenge isn't rising from the ashes. It's walking away without smelling like smoke, and that's where this story ends. Share your thoughts below. Thank you for being here. If this resonated, explore the other stories on this channel. Until next time, my friend.